a quick look at the back to Eden garden. In the edge of the back to Eden garden, I have raised beds in an arbor where we grow vegetables. I have onions and beets and carrots and squash, basil, bush or pole beans, and cucumbers all growing there presently. But on the actual back to Eden garden, I grow the climbing or vining plants, such as the squash, winter squash. This winter squash on this side is a butternut squash, and you can see it's spread considerably. There are two plants here on this total growth. The one in the front is a butternut, and the one in the back is a red Kuri. And there's one plant of each, and they've spread out considerably. This back to Eden garden was made about 6 years ago. I put down cardboard, double layer of cardboard, then put 6 inches of wood chips on top of it. And this has been a really productive vegetable patch ever since then. The butternut squash this year are growing better than I've ever seen them. The vines are totally full of squash. You can see one here. There's a young one right there. There's a big one back in there, which I think is just barely visible, but it's in there. There's blooms on the vines where they're still blooming and setting fruit. And over here you can see some of the bigger butternut squash. There's 3 of them right here together. There's this one here. There's one underneath of that leaf there, and there's one under that leaf. And I counted 14 in here total. But this is a young one, just started today. But the vines are just producing. In another week or two, I'll start pruning these vines so it forces them to ripen the fruit rather than growing more squash plant or squash fruit. There's another large squash in there. There's another one back in here that I think is fairly visible. I'm shadowing it, shading it with my shadow. But you can see that the camera had shut off on me, so I'm going to try and start it again and see if we can finish the video. On this side of the butternuts is a Red Kuri squash. You can see one in there, orange one or yellow one. That'll turn deep red, almost like a pumpkin with an orangish red. There's a butternut squash adjacent to it. And as we come over, you'll see a lot more of the Red Kuris. The leaves are completely different on a Red Kuri than they are on a butternut, which makes it convenient. But they've all grown together, so it's hard to separate them now. There's another Red Kuri under here. There's a bigger one back here. You can see these vines have gone probably 25 feet outwards. The interesting thing about growing on these wood chips is the wood chips are very rich. They decompose into a really black soil, and the squash vines send their roots down into those wood chips and take nutrients out of them. This particular Red Kuri I almost lost this year due to a squash vine borer, and I came out when that happened, and I put dirt, soil on top of each of the vines where they were coming off of the main plant, and they sent roots down into that soil that I had put on them, and all this is new growth since that time. So I did learn that you can save a winter squash when it starts, when it gets attacked by the squash vine borer. You simply put soil on top of the vine. Every place there's a leaf joint, you can put soil, and it will send down roots. And I don't know if I can find a place where I put the soil. I was going to try and get to one in the vines here. This is one here. This is a pile of soil where I put it over the vines, and you can see more vines grew over the top of it, and you can see where leaves are coming up out of the soil. There's about 6 places where I've done that in here, and it salvaged this plant so that it was able to continue growing. This is our biggest Red Kuri, and it's absolutely beautiful. That'll make a beautiful winter squash. You can see where I pulled out some weeds here, how rich the soil is underneath of these wood chips, and that's the reason these squash vines grow so beautifully here. So if you have room for a back-to-Eden garden and you like to grow things like winter squash, it can't be beat. I put down, about 6 years ago, put down double cardboard all over this area that I picked up at a furniture store free of charge. And then I had loads of wood chips hauled in and put 6 inches of wood chips on top of the cardboard. And it's been here ever since. And each fall I add about 1 inch or 2 of wood chips to refresh it. And it just keeps growing and developing. So that pretty much concludes the tour of the back-to-Eden garden. If you have any questions, post them down below and I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching. I'll add a little bonus to this video, which is not part of the back-to-Eden, but it's beautiful. This is what's called an autumn clematis, and it's just now beginning to bloom. It has such a sweet, sweet smell to it that it just fills the entire yard with its scent. It's so sweet. It's about maybe 1/3 in bloom right now. It's got a lot to go yet, maybe 1/4. But if you get a chance and you have some place to let it climb, it's just an absolutely beautiful plant. But it has to be pruned back every year. That's the only bad thing about it. Because as you can see, this is 1 year's growth. This was cut off last fall to about 2 feet off the ground. And this is all new growth since then. Off the side of that is the comfrey, which I grow for making comfrey tea and comfrey salve. And I cut it 3 or 4 times a year and use the leaves to mulch the garden. They're very nutritious. So I have quite a bit of comfrey. This part over here is growing in the back-to-Eden garden. This is the original comfrey that was planted probably 10 years ago. It was cut back about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and you can see that's all new growth since then. So, just an added bonus. This is a leek plant that went to seed. It's a biennial, so it blooms and goes seed the second year. And I kept it here so I'd collect seeds and plant leeks next summer from it. So again, thanks for watching.